Dear Naruto Lemon fans, I'm thrilled to invite all of you to my Boosty channel, where you can enjoy exclusive Naruto Lemon scenes in a comfortable and supportive community. Choose from various subscription tiers, from Mini Lemon to God Lemon, and gain access to unique content tailored just for our fans. Plus, subscribers to over Naruto Lemon and God Lemon will receive special mentions in my videos. Support my channel and dive deeper into the world of Naruto today. Dare! Tell me, why do you keep staring at me like that? He shouted to the heavens, as he walked about the village streets. He absolutely hated it. They were always staring at him with those eyes filled with hatred and fear. They were always whispering about how he was nothing but trouble or how he should just go away. As if he wasn't even human. Why did they look at him like that? What did he do to deserve their scorn? Why did they kick him out of the shops? Why did they keep him away from the other children? What did he do to anger them so much? It had been like this since the day he had been born. They had always avoided him. As if he didn't deserve to be alive. He had a right to live, he was Naruto Uzumaki, he was going to be Hokage someday. But even with all the confidence he had, no matter how many times he shouted his name, they never noticed him. The kids always avoided him, and when they didn't, they were soon told by their parents to do so. He always ended up alone, swinging by himself. That was usually how the day ended, but Hokage Gigi always told him to never give up. He was going to become the greatest ninja that ever lived, a hero like no other, no matter what the village said. The village of Konoha was strange, that was the only way she could describe it. From the booming shops, the large number of houses, the shinobi forces moving about, and the rest of the people, oh the people. When they came in, they were all smiling, all happy and jovial. It was as if they were one but family. Until they came along. She could tell they were staring at her, judging her, as if she were some kind of foreign object they weren't quite familiar with. Honestly, that impression wasn't too far off. She could hear their whispering about their foreign clothing, their strange looks, and her horns. It was like she was some kind of alien or something, just like at home. She tightened her grip on her father's hand as they walked about, as he squeezed his hand ever so slightly, a small semblance of comfort that wouldn't last. She frowned. They were only here because her father had some business to deal with the village leader, Hokage, from what her father told her. The meeting was supposed to be the final confidential between the two of them. Between the head monk at the main fire temple and the leader of the village hidden in the leaves. It was routine, something that would happen every half a decade or so. Initially, she begged her father to take her with him, how she loathed being confined within their temple walls, all alone. Now she wasn't so sure, her father would have to leave her. Her father leaned down to her eye level and smiled softly towards her. "All right, princess, why don't you hang around here for a little bit while I deal with some business," he told her. She pouted, "I don't want to." She whinnied, but he only ruffled her hair. "I know you don't, I don't want to leave you either," he said, "but the meeting won't take longer than a few hours, won't you be good, for me?" He asked. She frowned once again, but her response came in only a whisper, "Promise?" She asked, as she stuck out her small pinky finger towards her. And he looked at her with a fond expression as he smiled once again, as he hooked his own finger with hers. "Promise," he repeated, as a wide smile stretched across his daughter's face. She didn't like it when he lied. "Now, I know you don't like socializing, but why don't you go and play with some of those children over there?" Her father suggested, as he pointed to a nearby park. "I heard that the Konoha people are really nice," he added. As she looked towards the nearby park, she saw the multitude of happy children playing various games like tag or even on the swing sets or even just playing with a nearby ball. Each one was smiling, each one was happy. Honestly, she felt a little envious. Would she be happy if she played with them too? Would she gain a smile just like them? Questions she wouldn't know, questions that could be only answered if she went up to them. "All right," she said with a small sigh, finally letting go of her father's hand. She took her first steps. 5 years later. Konohagakure no Sato hadn't changed much with time. The village still smiled, the village still laughed, and the village still prospered as one of the 5 greatest hidden villages. And with time grew new people, new shinobi, and new embers within the will of fire. The philosophy of the first Hokage. It was an ideal passed down that it was the shinobi and the citizens of Konoha that formed a family which would love, prosper, and die to protect the future generations. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the reigning third Hokage, was one such practitioner. The aged man had served this village for several decades, ever since the second Hokage had appointed him shortly before he died. And ever since his successor, the fourth Hokage, valiantly died to protect this village 12 years ago during a violent attack from a Bijou, a tailed beast. He had witnessed many of his shinobi fight and die to protect the village they all held dear. But he had also witnessed his shinobi survive, and fall in love, later giving birth to many of those who would also fight and die for their precious ones they held so dear. He glanced at the second person in the room, holding on to the document that had arrived with the newcomer. As a knock reached his door, with the entrance opening not long after. Normally Hiruzen would have sighed, but he was honestly happy that the boy at least knocked this time. In stepped a boy with spiky golden hair, blue eyes, and he appeared to be wearing a hideous orange jumpsuit. "You called for me, Gigi," the boy said. "That I did, Naruto-kun," the aged man said. "Tell me, did you finally realize how awesome I am and decide to just give me the hat now?" Naruto said confidently. Hiruzen chuckled, "No, unfortunately I think I'll have to wear this hat for a few more years, and I'm afraid you will still have to take the exam tomorrow like everyone else," he told the boy. Naruto frowned, remembering the fact that he still had to take the genin exams the next day. This would be his third exam, and he still hasn't been able to form an actual clone jutsu yet. "So, what did you have the ANBU call me here for?" Naruto asked. He wasn't a shinobi yet. "Well, Naruto-kun, I think that would best explained by her," Hiruzen said, gesturing to the other occupant in the room. Naruto turned his head, as he saw a young woman, who looked to be around the age of 15 or so. Her hair was a bright teal, with eyes as golden as honey. She appeared to be wearing an elegant white kimono with teal accents that matched her hair, with a yellow obi that matched her eyes. But the most distinct thing about her was a peculiar set of pearly white horns that rested atop her head. Were they a part of some kind of bloodline? Something within his mind told him that this girl seemed familiar, but he couldn't recall ever seeing anything like them before. She smiled towards him. "My name is Kiyohime," she said, reintroducing herself. "It is nice to see you again, dear husband." "What?" Naruto shouted in surprise. Who was this girl? She said that she was his husband. What did she mean they were married? He was too young to be married. He still needed to be Hokage. Hiruzen sighed. "I'm afraid that is not true," he told the boy. Naruto sighed in relief. "Oh, this was a prank, wasn't it? Was this for dyeing your hair pink last week?" He laughed slightly. Hiruzen's eye twitched, remembering that particular event. He remembered how his umbu had laughed at him for nearly 5 minutes before he had found out. Luckily, he was able to wear his Hokage's hat, so nobody else was able to see him in such a state. And if he remembered correctly, both Bear and Owl were still serving gate guard duty to this day. "Don't bring up that time," Hiruzen told him harshly. "Alright," Naruto conceded, "but how'd you get this girl to help you? Is she your great-granddaughter or something?" he asked. It was then he felt the weight of the world rest upon him. He could barely breathe as he turned his head, as a shiver ran through his spine. Then he saw it. It could only be itself. Countless fires burned the world asunder, as thousands of pained screams could be heard echoing in the distance. And at the center of it all, he saw the older girl. Her face was shadowed, but her now slitted eyes glowed in the darkness, matching the destroyed world around them in a fire abyss. "You mean you don't remember me?" the girl, Kiyohime, said in a whisper. But even with the countless screams around them, he could still hear her voice. She almost sounded disappointed. He tried to speak, but the words never came. "I think that's enough, Kiyohime-san," Hiruzen's voice echoed out. "From what I was told, you haven't seen each other in a very long time, and even then your interaction was short. It is no surprise that he cannot initially recall your initial meeting," the Hokage reasoned out. The world around him broke. He was back in the Hokage's office again, as he took a deep breath. What was that? Was it some kind of ninja jutsu? He couldn't believe a girl as young as her was so strong. "I suppose you are right, I guess I'll have to help him remember," Kiyohime said with a giggle that sent a chill down his neck. Wait. What were they talking about? Had he met this girl, Kiyohime was it, before? Hiruzen gave the girl a flat look, before ignoring what she said altogether. "What I meant was you two are not married." A sigh of relief came from Naruto's mouth. "You're engaged," he finished. "You hear that, Naruto-kun? We're getting married," Kiyohime said in excitement as she rushed towards, pulling the boy into a tight embrace. Naruto froze, not even registering how tight Kiyohime was holding him. Until it finally registered in his mind. "What?" Naruto once again said in shock. He couldn't be engaged, he was an orphan, he didn't have any parents to marry him off. What's more, he was in love with Sakura-chan, he couldn't marry another girl just yet. "I'm engaged? But I haven't even met her before," he nearly yelled. "You mean you don't want to marry me?" Kiyohime said darkly, as Naruto's heart nearly stopped. "Well no, but I," Naruto stuttered out in fear, before he was interrupted. "Excellent, I've already signed the documents for your engagement," Hiruzen said. "Now why don't you go and show her to your apartment, given that she'll be staying with you for a little while," Hiruzen told him. But I," Naruto repeated, as the girl began to drag him out of his office, closing the door behind them. Hiruzen chuckled a bit at the boy's expression. That'll teach the boy to stop pranking him for a little while. He should do this more often. Leaning back in his chair, retrieving his pipe, as he reached into his secret drawer within his desk. He needed some time to relax, as he searched for his white-haired student's latest piece of work. He frowned, as instead of grabbing Ika he instead grabbed something else. It had been a letter that had arrived, the marriage proposal, sent by the girl's father straight to him. His frown deepened. He didn't know how the man had discovered Naruto's lineage after just one meeting. Kiyohime's grip on his arm didn't lessen as they walked about the village. They walked in a silence as he led her to his apartment. He was still stunned by the fact he was supposed to get married. How was he supposed to take it? Was he supposed to be happy? Was he supposed to be sad? He didn't know. In all honesty, he never expected to get married, at least not so soon. Or maybe even at all. The female population of Konoha didn't seem to like him, at all. Kiyohime seemed nice enough, if a bit clingy. He was so lost in thought that he didn't notice the looks he and Kiyohime had been receiving. Sure, there were the normal hate-filled glares, which Kiyohime subsequently sent a glare right back. But there were also looks of curiosity, about both the girl's identity and their relationship to him. It wasn't long before they reached his apartment. He opened the door. "Oh my," Kiyohime said as she saw what was inside, as piles and piles of empty ramen cups and loose clothes laid along the floor. It seems he hadn't been able to clean his apartment in a while. Naruto, noticing the girl's discomfort, tried to explain himself. "Oh, sorry about this, if I knew you were coming I would have cleaned. But He trailed off. "Then I guess I'll have to clean," Kiyohime resolved, as she went to pick up some of the trash. "But you don't have to do that," he told her, but Kiyohime only shook her head. No, I wouldn't be a good wife. If I am not capable of cleaning up after you, she said. But Naruto tried to refute, before he was interrupted. Do you not want me to be a good wife? Kiyohime said darkly, as she incinerated the trash within her palm. Naruto gulped. This was going to be a long day. She burned everything. All the empty ramen containers, most of his dirty clothes, even all the ramen he had stored up. She reasoned that I wouldn't be healthy for him to eat ramen all the time. And, as his wife, she would provide him with home-cooked healthy meals from now on. He could get that. Nei-chan had told him that numerous times. But what he didn't understand was why she had to burn all his ramen. He would never admit it, but he cried a little when he saw it. He learned a few details of their marriage proposal. Kiyohime would stay within his apartment for a little while, around a few months. Then she lamented that she would have to head back to where she lived at the fire temple for a little while. Then she'd come back, and rinse and repeat until they got married. Would joyously stay with him in the leaf. Speaking of which, they were supposed to get married when he turned 16. The day he turned 16, and not a day sooner. He didn't know how to feel about it, and so a majority of their time cleaning was spent in silence. After they cleaned up, he had opted to take a bath. Kiyohime had offered to wash his back, but judging by the look on her face, he properly refused. It was already pretty late and he only had one bed, so he offered to sleep on the couch, but one look from the older girl, he was sorely turned down. Now he laid in his bed, clutched by the much older girl all night as her soft, curvy, body pressed against him. He didn't get a wink of sleep last night. He couldn't take it. Eventually, morning came, and he went to leave to take the genin exam. He was slightly disappointed that he didn't have any time to train the day prior. He still hadn't gotten the clone technique down. But he wouldn't let that stop him. He was Naruto Uzumaki, the future Hokage. He wouldn't let a measly clone technique stop him, again. He was about to make his way out the door to head to the ninja academy, until... Where do you think you're going? Kiyohime said, as Naruto's heart stopped. Turning back, he once again witnessed itself. And nothing, he stuttered out. Really? Because it looked like you were leaving, Kiyohime pointed out. Well, I was just heading to the academy for my shinobi exam, so... He trailed off, trying to explain himself. I see. Kiyohime said with her head low, as her face was shadowed in darkness. Naruto nodded. Yeah, so I have to go, I don't want to be late. Take me. Kiyohime interrupted. What? Naruto said in shock. Take me, she repeated. Well, I can't just take you, it's a test, and it's kind of important, so... Naruto tried to explain. Kiyohime frowned, but she did see his point. But she still didn't like the fact that he was leaving. Hey, Kiyohime said, you'll come back, right? She asked, slightly hesitantly. What? Naruto asked in confusion, not having seen this side of the girl. Of course I will, he answered. Promise? Kiyohime asked timidly. Naruto didn't know why the girl was acting this way, but he gave her his usual smile that he always did to help cheer people up. Of course. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, the future Hokage. I will pass the test, and I will come back, Dadabayo. He stated, confidence oozing from his very being. Kiyohime smiled, for a reason that he didn't know, but it was only then that she let him leave. Hours later. They've been lying to you your whole life, Naruto, since the decree 12 years ago. Mizuki revealed. What decree? Naruto asked in disbelief. Everyone knows except you, Mizuki told him. Irika is trying to hide it from you even now. He'd do anything to shut me up. What is this decree? Why does everyone else know about it? Naruto questioned. Don't tell him it's forbidden. Irika demanded. The decree is, no one can tell you the nine-tailed fox is inside you. Mizuki revealed, as Naruto widened his eyes in disbelief. The fox spirit that killed Irika's parents and destroyed our village has taken over your body. You are the nine-tailed fox. Stop it! Irika yelled out. They've all been sneaking around, hiding things from you your whole life, Mizuki told him. Didn't you think it was strange how they treated you? He asked. Like dirt, like they hated you for just being alive. No, 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 no. Naruto said, refusing to believe his words. But still the white-haired Chunin continued on, that's why you will never be accepted in this village. Even your beloved sensei hates your guts. Suddenly it all made sense now. All the scornful looks, why he was never treated like the other kids, all the hateful remarks, everything. He was a monster, he was. What the? Are you doing to my Naruto? A voice demanded off in the distance. A voice broke him out of his thoughts. It was strange, the voice almost sounded like. Naruto's head snapped to the side as he spotted the girl. Kiyohime. Who the? Are you? Mizuki demanded. Kiyohime? Naruto said in disbelief, what are you doing here? The girl didn't answer him, as she only stared at the white-haired Chunin with hate-filled eyes. You hurt my Naruto, prepare to die. She said harshly, as a massive glob of fire spat out of her mouth. Mizuki didn't have time to react, as he was engulfed in the flame within seconds. Leaving the Chunin screaming out in agony as his body burned away. Not a second later, Kiyohime rushed towards him, as she clutched onto his body. Naruto-kun, are you alright? The older girl asked. Naruto was frozen in place, unable to speak. Naruto-kun? Kiyohime repeated. Kiyohime, how much of that did you hear? Naruto asked in a whisper. Kiyohime blinked, what? Before she realized what he meant, oh, all of it. She answered, as she continued to fawn over him. Why? Naruto asked. Why what? Kiyohime questioned. Why do you care so much? Naruto elaborated, when I'm nothing but a monster? Kiyohime blinked, not expecting him to sound so vulnerable. Why should I care? She asked, as Naruto's head snapped up. What? Naruto asked in shock. Why should I care if you're some monster? Kiyohime elaborated. You are my betrothed, I don't care if you're some kind of demon. She told him. As tears fell down Naruto's eyes, no one had told him something like that. Usually, nobody ever wanted him around, nobody wanted to be with him, because of who he was. Thank you, Kiyohime-chan, he said, adding the new suffix to her name. As he quickly tried to wipe away his tears with his sleeve, as Kiyohime giggled. What is it? Naruto asked in confusion. It's just, I thought that this was almost ironic, this situation. Given how we originally met. Kiyohime reminisced. What are you talking about? Naruto asked. Kiyohime frowned, you mean you don't remember? She said, she sounded hurt. Something within his heart ached, it was strange, foreign even. Was this what it was like having a friend? He didn't know why his heart hurt so much. She said that they had met before, and because he didn't remember, she was sad. All he knew was that he didn't like seeing her hurt, he liked seeing her smile. He tried to remember their earlier meeting, as a distant memory came to a forefront of his mind. What was it you just asked? A boy yelled rather obnoxiously. She frowned, I asked if you would allow me to play with you. She repeated her earlier statement. The surrounding kids, a set of 3 boys, laughed, encroaching ever so closer to her. One of the boys smirked towards her, really, you want to play with us? He laughed out. Who would want to play with a horned freak like you? Another shouted. Yeah, and what's with those clothes, it's like you're some kind of princess. The third added. An ugly princess. They all laughed aloud, before continuing on with their provocations. None of them noticed the girl's boiling rage. It was as if 1,000 infernos were brimming within her very soul, screaming out for her to retaliate. As she took a deep breath, preparing to form a verbal onslaught, and perhaps an actual onslaught, on these 3 children, a voice stopped her. Earlier. Dull blue eyes gazed upon the other kids within the park, as unshed tears welled up within his eyes. He wanted to cry, wanted to rebel, but honestly, he shouldn't be surprised. This wasn't anything abnormal for him. He asked kids if they would allow himself to play with them in any way at all. Honestly, it didn't matter which game they would play. He only hoped that 1 or 2 of the kids wouldn't know who he was, before their parents ascertained his identity. But unsurprisingly, they all refused him, ridiculed him, and then finally, they avoided him. It wasn't anything new. Coming here was only wishful thinking on his part. And so he made his way to a nearby swing set, one hung upon a nearby tree overshadowed by the large foliage far away from where the kids were playing. Honestly, he didn't understand why such a swing set would be there, but at the moment it didn't matter to him. Why did the kids always treat him this way? Why did the shop vendors always kick him out? The parents treating him like a plague? Wallowing within his own thoughts, he only barely saw a glimpse of the new figure that approached the other kids. Her hair was a light blue, as she wore an elegant teal kimono to match. She drew the attention of many of the kids within the playground as she approached. And it was obvious to see as to why she would stand out. And although it was clear that she looked to be well off, there happened to be many aristocrats and their children that visited Konoha. Although they usually didn't bring their children to a small civilian playground. No, the thing that stood out about her was her horns. Pale horns stood atop her head, a contrast to her vibrant teal hair, as they jutted out in every direction. They were strange, and he had never seen anything like them. She appeared to be walking toward some of the other kids within the park, and in a similar action to what he had done before, she has asked if she could play with the other children. Just who was this girl? One thing was for certain, he'd keep a close eye on her. For one reason or another. Hey! He yelled out, drawing the boys' attention, knock it off. He told them, as they all turned to the owner of the voice. Who are you? One of the boys questioned. Until another boy answered his question, hey. It was that boy we threw out earlier. He realized. Oh yeah, the first boy said, recalling the incident. Get lost. He told him, but the boy only ignored their demands. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, future Hokage. The offending boy shouted, causing all to look at him, before instantly bursting into laughter. You? A Hokage? One of the children laughed out. Yeah, Databeo, the offending boy said with a strange verbal tick. Now stop messing with this girl. He ordered. And why should we? One of the boys asked. Yeah. The other 2 yelled in agreement. Meanwhile, the teal-haired girl practically had stars within her eyes as she observed the newcomer, his golden hair, his tan skin, and his cerulean blue eyes that seemed to be as if they were an endless ocean. What was this beating within her chest? Why were her cheeks flushing? She didn't know, but she'd like to find out. The blonde-haired boy made a strange hand sign, as he yelled, clone jutsu. As smoke formed around the boy. But as the smog dissipated, it revealed what the boy had created. As a deflated copy fell onto the ground, lifeless. The other kids laughed at his failed technique. What? This guy can't even do one little technique, he'll never be a ninja, much less Hokage. One laughed. Naruto grit his teeth, I'll show you I'm going to be Hokage one day, he roared. The other boy smirked, oh really? The Hokages were unparalleled shinobi. You're just a weak, pathetic little orphan who can only make a clone die next to him, he said, causing his friends to laugh. Naruto glared at the boy, as he tightened his fist. I'll show you. He promised. The other boy matched his glare. Oh yeah, show me what? He questioned confidently. If the blonde wanted to fight, he knew he would win. I'll show you, I'm not weak, Naruto shouted. But what Naruto didn't take into account was for the boy to rear back his fist, as he began to strike. Smack! Naruto woke up with hazy eyes. His vision seemed to blur, as he gazed at the pale blue sky after his failure. Honestly, it was his fault he went out like this. He was the one who charged into danger so recklessly. But it probably would have been better if he had just stayed silent. But when he had saw those kids bullying that girl similarly to himself, he just couldn't stand it. His body moved on its own, he didn't want to see others get hurt. But as he tried to attempt the jutsu he had previously learned within the ninja academy, one he had never been able to perform. Once again, his technique failed, and he paid the price. This wasn't the first time this had happened. He had tried to save another girl who had been picked on during the winter time. But like before, he had failed to do so, and when he came to, the girl he had tried to save was nowhere to be found. Suddenly, his vision darkened, as a shadow overtook him. As his vision slowly focused, he was able to make out the figure that overshadowed him. Are you alright? She asked. It was that same girl he had tried to save earlier. What was she doing here? He had just assumed that she would have just ran off, like the other girl he had tried to save. He quickly got up off the ground, fast enough that his vision started to blur, as he dusted himself off. What? He asked in confusion, not having fully heard what she said. A smooth had reached up and cupped his cheek. As his vision started to focus once again, vibrant gold stared into a cool cerulean. As the girl asked, "Those boys hit you?" "I asked if they hurt you," she repeated. And Naruto's face contorted in recollection. Huh? No, I should be fine, he told her. That had been the usual response he gave whenever he was hurt. Usually, the rare few people who asked, doctors mostly, if he was hurt didn't bother to actually help him. And so it was better for everyone if he just said he was fine. His wounds usually healed quickly anyway. But there was something different with this girl's words that on the rare few occasions that he had been to the doctors. She sounded concerned. Was that it? The only person who had ever been concerned with his well-being was his grandfather figure. But even then, with the way this girl looked at him, he could tell that her concern was genuine, perhaps even more genuine than his grandfather. Why did this girl care so much? That was until her hand that had still been grasping onto his face pinched onto his cheek. Ow ow! He screamed out. You're lying, I don't like it when people lie, she said as her face darkened, her eyes blazing within as if they reflected a fiery inferno. A shiver ran throughout Naruto's spine, as he quickly tried to rebuke her claim. And no, honestly, I'm fine, he stuttered out. The girl gazed firmly into his eyes, trying to discern the truth within his statement. Surprisingly, her grip lessened. All right, the girl conceded, as she then began to look around. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll have to track down those kids from earlier. Sadly, they ran off, but don't worry, I'll deal with them, ufufu. She laughed out, getting a scary look across her face. But as she tried to run off in the direction the kids ran, Naruto stopped her, grabbing onto her palm in the process. You don't have to do that, Naruto said rather nervously. As the girl's face was sent into a deep blush. Naruto panicked, as he quickly pulled his hand away in fear, thinking that he upset the girl, as she seemed frozen in place. But as his grip left her own, she quickly turned towards him. No! She shouted, as she hastily grabbed his hand once again. Before she corrected herself, I like holding your hand, she said rather bashfully. That's okay, Naruto stuttered out rather uncharacteristically, as he had a faint dusting on his cheeks at this girl's rushed actions. But I don't even know your name. He trailed off. Kiyohime. The girl shouted out, my name is Kiyohime. As Naruto smiled slightly, Kiyohime, huh? That's a really pretty name. He said, too fast for him to think, as her blush deepened. The children both stood in an awkward silence, neither one of them meeting each other in the eye. Naruto's thoughts were sent into a panic at this girl's proximity, the makings of a crush already forming within her mind. Meanwhile, Kiyohime was unable to form coherent thoughts, her mind only coming to one conclusion. He's touching me. She repeated within her mind, as something else formed within her mind. Naruto took a deep breath, preparing to ask the girl a question that had been plaguing his mind. Kiyohime. Naruto said, drawing the girl's asked, breaking her out of her spiraling thoughts. Do you want to play with me? He asked, as the girl went stiff. As Naruto's insecurities were sent to the forefront of his mind, he wondered if he had come off a little too strong. And that this would end, like the many numerous occasions he had asked the other kid would play with him. That is, if you want to. He trailed off. I'd love to. The girl said, as she tightened her grip on his hand. Naruto smiled so brightly that it sent Kiyohime's heart into a frenzy. Naruto and Kiyohime both had a smile across their faces as they played together. They were almost in total isolation, as it seemed that the world around them didn't seem to matter, the two of them were in their own little world. With the park having been deserted, ironically because of the presence of both Naruto and Kiyohime. As the sun was setting, none of them realized how long they had spent together, that was until Kiyohime. A man called out, and for the first time in her life, Kiyohime frowned at the presence of the voice. Naruto looked over, seeing the girl's downtrodden express, as well as seeing the man who called out to the girl. He realized this man's affiliation with the girl. Kiyohime, is that your father? He asked. And the girl solemnly nodded. Do you have to go now? He questioned. And once again, Kiyohime nodded, not being able to meet him in the eye. I understand. He could tell where this was going. This was usually how it ended for him. On rare occasions, he would play with one of the children, they would have fun. But eventually, his newfound friend's parents would come along, they would realize who he was, and he would never see that person again. As he watched Kiyohime slowly walk towards her father, he could feel a pant within his heart. Something told him that losing Kiyohime would somehow hurt worse than the first time this happened. He still remembered the first time this occurrence had happened, with a pink-haired girl with dazzling jade-green eyes. Sakura, if he remembered correctly, but then again, he hadn't seen her since, so it didn't really matter. He didn't know how long it had been, but he began to watch Kiyohime's retreating figure. He faintly heard the sound of sniffling as he watched her go. He laughed, he could see what the girl found so funny about this situation. They met when he saved her from a few bullies, but now she was saving him from shinobi. The girl really was awesome. Somehow, Kiyohime could tell what he was thinking. As she smiled, could she tell he could remember, but there was something else, something he couldn't quite remember. Kiyohime's grip tightened. Kiyohime-chan? He asked in confusion. Naruto. Kiyohime started, as she caught Naruto's attention. You didn't come home today, you didn't forget your promise, did you? She said darkly, as Naruto's face paled. Luckily, a sound made their way to both of their ears, as they both turned. Kiyohime tilted her head, as she let go of her grip on his body. Oh, you're still alive? Kiyohime stated, as they both stared at the singed, but still alive, Mizuki. As he crawled along the floor, trying to make his escape. Kiyohime giggled, as she slowly walked towards the Rouge Ninja. Naruto's sweat dropped. But her let her onslaught continue, happy to not be on the receiving end of the girl's ire. But as he heard the Chunint's screams he gulped. Yeah. Mizuki wasn't in for a good time. After Kiyohime had dealt with Mizuki, they were brought before the Hokage with the forbidden scroll of seals, who then explained to him about his Jinchuriki situation. He wasn't quite happy with the old man, but Kiyohime had given the Hokage a brutal tougher lashing, so he believed the man understood the situation well enough. The Hokage had even decided to allow him to graduate, on the grounds that his tests had been tampered with. After that, he left the man's office. He still hadn't visited him again. He spent the next week spending time with Kiyohime, although he still didn't know how to feel about their impending marriage. But he decided that he should at least get to know the girl. The girl was strange, and obviously clingy. But he still considered her as a friend. The first night she had cooked for him, and he could honestly say that it was delicious, so delicious that he didn't go to Ichiraka ramen the entire week. As the days passed, it was time for him to get a genin team. He'd elected to go alone, but Kiyohime elected to go with him, saying it was his job to look over her and show her around the village as an excuse, although she really just wanted to spend time with him. He refused, she got angry, they both headed to the academy. The trip was short, if a bit uneventful. Bet expected at least something to happen, like a whiny grandson trying to sneak up on him. But nothing happened, and they made their way towards the classroom, near the back, where nobody could see them. It was as if everyone else was in their own little world, which made sense since many of the students were worried about which team they were on. Many of them, not bothering to even notice that the once failed dead last, was within the room. Although 2 people did notice. One was a lazy boy with a penchant for cloud watching. "What are you doing here, Naruto? This isn't for dropouts, you can't be here unless you graduated," Shikamaru pointed out, although he only came near them because he was walking down to his own seat. Naruto wanted to speak up, but the look across Shikamaru's face stopped him in his tracks. Kiyohime sent the pineapple-haired boy a scathing glare, one that would melt anyone in their place. Shikamaru was no different, as he paled after seeing the teal-haired young woman. Honestly, it reminded him of his mother. Shikamaru left, but not before a near-silent mutter of "troublesome woman" left his lips, so quiet that he hoped the scary female hadn't heard him. Naruto turned towards his dragon-like friend, Kiyohime. "What did you do?" He questioned in near disbelief, whispering so nobody else could hear him. Kiyohime giggled into her sleeve. "Whatever do you mean, Naruto-kun?" she asked obligingly, although Naruto doubted she was unaware of her actions. The other person who'd spotted their exchange was a milky-eyed girl, around Naruto's age, with blue hair styled in a hime-cut. She looked on worriedly, almost in disbelief. Who is that with Naruto-kun?" she questioned within her mind, sending an uncharacteristic glare towards the young woman. It didn't take long for the doors to the classroom to open once again, as 2 loud young females stepped inside near inches apart. They were fighting about what he truly didn't know. One was a blonde young girl, the same age as everyone else within their classroom, bearing Kiyohime. She had teal eyes with no pupils whatsoever, as well as having fair pale skin, similar to Kiyohime's. She wore purple clothing. The other girl was one with exotic hair parted to show her face, her strands the unusual shade of pink. With the greenest emerald eyes he had ever seen. She wore a red dress with white outlines. Ino Yamanaka and Sakura Haruno. Naruto prepared himself for the usual skipping of his heart when he looked at the pink-haired girl, but surprisingly, nothing came. He didn't know why, but for some reason his heart remained the same, even when he looked at the girl he thought he loved. What was wrong? Didn't he still love Sakura? He didn't know. But it seemed Kiyohime noticed that he was staring, as she griped onto his hand. So tightly he could almost feel it breaking. "Naruto, why are you staring at that girl?" she questioned in a soft rage. Naruto didn't look back, for fear of what he would see, but his mind did conjured up a reasonable response as he sunk back into his chair. "And no reason, they were just being loud," he stuttered out. And surprisingly, his answer seemed to calm the irate woman down, as she accepted his words. "I see, Will, why don't you stare at me from now on?" she suggested, as she lessened her grip, although she did still hold on to his hand, more tentatively than before. Oh okay, Naruto told her, still in fear of seeing her like that once more. It didn't take long before their teacher came within the room, holding a clipboard as he did so. Irika Yumino surveyed the room, taking the roll call of all the surrounding students, as he spotted the young woman in the corner of the room. Oh, Kiyohime, what are you doing here? Irika questioned with a raised eyebrow, remembering the girl's name from when they'd met the day of the graduation exam. This drew all the students' attention to the beautiful girl next to the dead last. Well, I asked Naruto if I could come, she answered, as Naruto recalled the event, nodding in fear towards his teacher. I see, he stated, as he looked back towards his clipboard, this girl was beyond his pay grade. Leaving many to question just who this girl was. Surprisingly, it was Hinata who asked the unasked question. As the pale-eyes girl raised her hand and spoke up, Irika-sensei, who is that girl with Naruto-kun? She asked. Irika tried to speak, but in the end it was the dragon-like girl that answered, as she raised their interlocked hands and spoke up to the entire classroom. Well, isn't it obvious, I'm Naruto's betrothed. She revealed, surprising them all. It only took a moment before they spoke up on their disbelief. What? They all spouted. Hinata fainted. Kiyohime giggled into her sleeve. The rest of the day was certainly eventful, but eventually the chaos died down, and they were left to get their senseis. All except for them, for some reason his sensei was late. He waited so long that he ended up just sending Kiyohime to his home. His teammates being too engrossed in their shock to speak to them. He, Sakura, and Sasuke had met their sensei, a weird-looking silver-haired man who almost entirely covered his face. But it was the next day, Naruto found out just how strong the man was with the bell test, a test he had passed. The days flew by after that, he'd wake up to Kiyohime fixing him a good brunch, they'd talk or even just enjoy each other's company. It was then he would meet up with his team, and be subjected to the horrors of D-rank missions. And he usually grabbed a large snack in the afternoon, and came home to a nice dinner with Kiyohime once again. He was surprisingly content with this. This cycle happened for a little over a month, that was until, surprisingly, Sasuke had spoken up, requesting another mission. Sakura had instantly agreed with him, but Naruto had to think about it. He was content with his usual cycle, but he still wanted to reach out and take tougher missions. It was then that Naruto agreed, and they had been tasked with guarding a bridge builder from Wave Country. He only wished he hadn't had to tell Kiyohime. Thankfully, or unthankfully in some cases, Kiyohime was also forced to leave. As she had been requested to come back to her home within the Fire Temple once again. Do you really have to leave? Kiyohime pleaded, engulfing Naruto in a large hug. Kiyohime, Naruto sighed, I have a mission, and you have to go back to your home, he told her. Kiyohime only clutched onto him tighter. I know, but I don't want to go, I like it here, she said. Naruto smiled, that's great, you and I have something to look forward to when you come back. Kiyohime nodded, I can't wait to be back here, with you. I may only be gone a few months, but it will feel like an eternity, she told him. Meanwhile, Tazuna, the bridge builder, Sasuke, and Sakura were staring at the scene. Sakura was in disbelief that a female was even talking to the blonde. Tazuna, though the scene was hard to watch, well, this is painful, he whispered to the dark-haired boy, as Sasuke nodded. Why could their silver-haired sensei come any earlier? Tazuna didn't understand what the two kids were worried about, they were headed the same way. They could say goodbye to each other later. The mission hadn't turned out like they had expected. Instead of the normal escort mission, they ended up being attacked by rougher ninja. They found out that their client had lied to them, labeling the mission lower than how it actually was. You see, it turned out that Tazuna's homeland was under the control of a tyrannical shipping magnate, one who had leached off Wave Country to the point of poverty. But even still their mission was to protect the bridge builder, for him to build a bridge that would connect the island to the mainland, giving hope back to his country, and they decided to still accept the mission. Kakashi-sensei had taught them a new technique, something to help them better control their chakra. Sakura, with her lower chakra reserves, had managed to complete it on the first try. It took him and Sasuke several more attempts to do so. But they eventually did it, all the while a tired little boy had dismissed their efforts, believing that their deaths were inevitable. He didn't accept that, and may have blown up in the kid's face, as he went off into the forest to train once more. It seemed he'd fallen asleep while doing so. "You'll catch a cold if you sleep here, wake up," a voice told him, as someone jostled the sleeping blonde awake. Naruto opened his eyes blearily, spotting one of the most beautiful girls he had ever seen. Naruto lifted his body up, rubbing his eyes in an effort to wipe away his tiredness, as he caught a better look at the young woman that lay before him. She had pale skin, with dark hair that framed her heart-shaped face. With the darkest chocolate-brown eyes he had ever witnessed. She wore a bunk kimono, one with a small floral design as well as having a black collar around her neck, with a white obi tied around her waist. All in all, she looked rather beautiful, the epitome of femininity, similarly to that of Kiyohime. "Who are you?" he questioned, not recognizing the girl at all. It was then that he recognized where he was, or rather where he had been sleeping, as he blushed in embarrassment slightly. "I mean, what are you doing out here?" He questioned. It was the middle of the forest, not many beautiful women would come out here just for no reason. "I'm gathering herbs," she answered him. "Herbs?" he questioned. The girl nodded. "Yes, that's right, they're for treating illnesses and healing wounds," she explained. Naruto blinked, but he caught the message. "I see, do you need any help?" he asked, as the girl showed him just what she was looking for. "You start early, huh, sis?" Naruto stated, making small talk as he plucked one of the herbs from the ground. "I like it early," she told him, "it's calm, but I didn't think I'd find anyone sleeping out here in the woods," the Blackette remarked. Naruto smiled. "Yeah, well, I was training," he tried to explain. The girl hummed. "Oh, are you a ninja?" she questioned, before explaining her reasoning. "Because I noticed that headband you were wearing." Before she gained a small smirk. "Or are you just making a fashion statement?" she teased. Naruto smiled, pointing to his blue headband he was proud to wear upon his head. "You noticed? Great, only super cool ninjas can wear these," he slightly bragged. The girl raised an eyebrow, noting the information. "Oh really, I see, that's very impressive," she complimented, as Naruto rubbed the back of his head. "But," she started, before she looked down, "does that mean you're training for something dangerous?" the girl asked in concern. Naruto waved her off. "Not really, I'm just developing my skills, so I can get stronger." "You seem very strong now, isn't that enough?" she argued. But Naruto waved his hands in denial. No, I need to get stronger and stronger, I have to keep practicing," he explained. The girl eyed him. "How so? Why is it so important?" she questioned. But to Naruto the answer was obvious, "So I can become the best ninja in my village, and everyone will know who I am and will all respect me." He had to prove it to everyone. The girl leaned forward, enraptured by his words. "So are you doing it for a certain person? Or are you just doing it for yourself?" she asked. "Huh?" Naruto didn't understand it at all. The girl giggled, as Naruto took slight offense to this. "What are you laughing about?" he demanded, causing the girl to laugh even more. Before she stopped, as she looked at the Bolton boy once again. "Is there someone who is precious to you?" she asked. Naruto thought about it, unconsciously repeating her words. "Someone who, what do you mean?" he questioned. As the girl went in to explain her reasoning, "You see, when someone has something precious that they want to protect, it is only then they become genuinely strong," she told him. As Naruto pondered what she meant, remembering Kakashi protecting him from Zabuza, and Iruka jumping in the way of the large gummed shuriken thrown by Mizuki, and how he defeated Mizuki because of it. But for some reason, his thoughts replayed back to Kiyohime. Why? Yeah, I hear you, I know exactly what you're saying, he told her, as the girl picked up her basket and prepared to leave. You will get strong, very strong, she assured, as Naruto smiled. Goodbye, she told him as a farewell. We will meet again sometime, she assured, walking off. But then she stopped her movements. Oh, and by the way, I'm a boy, he revealed, causing Naruto to pale. Months later. Rain soaked his hair, but he didn't mind. He was dressed in dark clothing, a harsh contrast to what he usually wore. But his attire wasn't any different from the people that surrounded him. The dark was dark, with the shadows sweeping over him. The clouds were dark, with the shadows sweeping over him. It was as if the very world cried out, emphasizing its emotions through the weather pattern. Gazing upon the glass photograph, he was reminded of several memories, many of which left a bittersweet taste in his mouth. He would never see him again. Never bother him with his useless pranks. And he would never get to pester him to take him out for ramen. He pushed his feelings down. It's a shinobi rule, never show your feelings. Keep your mind focused, no matter what. No matter how much you're hurting inside, you can't shed a tear. He was a ninja, born to be emotionless soldiers to protect his village. He wouldn't allow himself to show just how much he was hurting. Silently placed his pure white rose on the gravestone, piling with the many flowers that it resembled. They were symbolic, something about hope and devotion. Although he had a bit of a green thumb, he didn't care much for the meaning behind the flowers. It was quiet, with nobody was willing to speak in such a trying time. He just silently left, unwilling to stay for the full service. And although he had never been to one before, he could say that he had an intense dislike of funerals. He stood at the top of the Hokage monument, the usual place he went to when he needed to think. But instead of sitting upon the face of the fourth, he decided to sit upon the face of the third. He didn't know why, but it just felt fitting, poetic even. Many of the people were attending the funeral. The ones that weren't were mourning quietly in their own homes. The Konoha crush had affected everyone, in more ways than one. He had wanted to be like them. To go to his apartment and lock the door to never leave. But he couldn't, for some reason he wasn't able to open his door at all, so he went here. He used to come up here to look at the village with his grandfather figure, before he. The village just looked so empty, desolate even. Not like how it usually was, nobody was smiling, nobody was happy. It was like he was in a whole new world. He only barely noticed the presence that walked beside him. Kiyohime, when did you get here? He asked. His voice was hollow, lifeless even. It surprised Kiyohime, but not as much as it surprised him. Today, the girl answered his question, as she sat down next to him. I heard what happened, about your Hokage, Kiyohime said solemnly. Yeah, he's gone, he said in a whisper. He was like a grandfather to me, he sighed. Kiyohime's heart sank, and although she hadn't been close to Hiruzen Sarutobi, she could tell Naruto was. Naruto had no parents, and no family to speak of whatsoever. It was only natural that he'd treat the adult figures he was close to in his life like actual family. Naruto Uzumaki was probably hurt by the third Hokage's death the most. Kiyohime leaned her head on his shoulder for comfort, showing Red that she was here for him. Kiyohime was silent, as she didn't know what she could say to help him. Luckily, Naruto seemed to want to talk to her. Tell me, he began in a whisper, his voice was soft, vulnerable. Why do people risk their lives for other people? He asked. Kiyohime thought about it, she really thought about his question. Well, that's an easy one, she smiled. To be willing to die for something, you must value that thing higher than your own life. Kiyohime answered elegantly. I see, Naruto said, holding his head low, as his fists tightened. So he died for nothing then. Orochimaru is still alive. The person who Hiruzen was trying to kill was still alive, and yet Hiruzen was dead. He died for nothing. That isn't it. Kiyohime shook her head, as she grasped his Titan's fingers with her own. Hiruzen died for Konoha, for you, she told him. Naruto's head whipped in her head direction, but why? He asked in surprise, although it was more of a shout than anything. Kiyohime smiled lovingly at him, because he cared about you, he was willing to die for you. She said. I'd die for you, she told him in a conviction, shocking Naruto in the process. You can't. Naruto told her, as a vulnerable thought came to the forefront of his mind. He whispered, clutching a hand to his stomach, right over his seal. You know what I am, I. Kiyohime's hands speed towards his cheeks, forcing his cerulean blue eyes to gaze into her golden orbs. I don't care. She told him, a light dusting of red across her cheeks, before she lowered her hands and turned away. A silence permeated the atmosphere, until Kiyohime spoke once more. You were the first person to talk to me, to see me. Kiyohime admitted, as she twirled some of her teal hair within her finger, everyone at the fire temple always avoided me, and when they couldn't, they always did the bare minimum to interact with me. All because of these. She said, gazing at the pearly white horns that jutted out from her head. They're a part of some bloodline, something that my mother had. Although I've never met her, it's always been just me and my father. Kiyohime told him. As she turned to face him, she could tell that he was listening to her intently. But then you came along, you were the first person to do so, and I guess, something awakened inside of me. Kiyohime admitted, as she got close to him, hugging him across the chest. That's why. I'll always be here for you, and I know you'll do the same for me, promise. She told him, whispering in his ear ever so slightly. Naruto didn't tell her anything, as nothing more needed to be said. He did, however, let a few tears fall from his eyes. He just knew, that was a promise he was willing to make. If that's how it is, I'll just have to sever that bond. How can a guy who can't save one friend become Hokage? He was angry. No. He was livid. His blood boiled, and it appeared that the vile substance was leaking from his skin. And honestly, that wasn't too far off. His body was surrounded by vile chakra, one that burned the entirety of his skin. It hurt to move, it hurt to see, it hurt to breathe, and yet he pressed on. He watched as large gray, flawed hands grew out from his opponent's back. As he got up from his fractured position, holding his hand low, he gripped his own wrist, as a blue, ethereal life erupted from his hand. Though, it didn't take long for the almost heavenly blue to be tainted by the dark, blackened, malicious chakra that its user was using. Chidori! Sasuke roared. Naruto was angry. His best friend, his brother in all but blood, was trying to leave. To desert the village, and become a rogue nin, all for his pursuit of power. All for his pursuit of power. It was said that in a battle, you open your heart to each other, to the point that they can understand one another without even speaking. He said he didn't have anyone, that he was alone. But it was far better than losing everyone and everything he had ever known. In many ways, he was right, he didn't have anyone he had ever lost, and he didn't have a family he never got to see again. But he did have someone, he wasn't alone. It was funny, he was fighting for his life and all he could think about was her. The girl who had entered his life in an instant and changed it forever. He held out his hand, his will materialized his weapon. But the usual swirling gold of his spiraling sphere was tainted too, forged by a mix of both his and his tenant's will, morphing into a vibrant orange. He had a promise to keep, several of them in fact, he wouldn't lose. Rasengan! He yelled back. And on a silent signal, they leapt at each other, aiming their powerful techniques with every intention to win. He wouldn't lose, he would come back, he resolved himself. Her heart felt as if it had been stabbed 1,000,000 times. This was her father's final meeting, and it wouldn't be long until they left back for their home at the fire temple. Her mind froze. Time seemed to freeze, and an eternity seemed to pass as she walked with shaking legs towards her father, an action that was almost automatic. She could practically sense her father's happy mood as she neared her father. He spoke to her, although she could barely hear it. "Hey pumpkin, how was?" His happy mood sleet ended as he saw her downcast mood. "Are you alright?" he asked concerned, but she didn't answer, as she only cast a small glance back towards her friend. He was still standing there, right where she had left him. Why didn't she say goodbye? She could feel a wetness within her eyes, as she gazed back at her new friend. She didn't want to go, she honestly liked it here much better than she ever did at the temple. She truly loved playing with her Naruto. Loved her Naruto? That's when something in her mind clicked, as an idea struck her mind. Raising her head as fast as lightning, she nearly shouted, "Wait, I need to talk to someone." As she rushed off, not giving her father a chance to respond, as he just stood there waiting. Naruto raised his head, spotting a fast-moving object within his peripherals. "Kiyohime? What are you?" His question was interrupted as she nearly crashed into him as she latched onto his arm faster than any speeding bullet ever could. Kiyohime, what are you doing?" he asked once again, as his friend's vice-like grip grabbed onto his arm. "I don't want to go," she said childishly, grasping onto his arm even tighter. "Huh? What are you?" Naruto asked confusedly, before he was interrupted. "I said I don't want to leave you," she nearly shouted, welling in her eyes. Something within her soul told her she needed to say this now, or else she would never get the chance. Naruto was still confused at his friend's actions, before he was once again interrupted. What do you? When I grow up, please make me your bride," she stated, rather boldly, waiting to hear her friend, and potential future lover's answer. Naruto was perplexed, not understanding what she meant. "Bride? What do you mean?" he asked, never hearing this particular term before. But he could tell this question meant a lot for Kiyohime. "Do you want to spend the rest of your life with me?" Kiyohime asked, a little too forceful for Naruto's liking. Naruto's response was almost automatic. If he had it his way, playing with Kiyohime, seeing her smile, he didn't want things to change. "Well yeah, but..." "Then promise." Kiyohime interrupted him, as she lessened her grip on his arm. Holding out her hand, she stuck out her pinky finger. "What?" Naruto asked in confusion. "Pinky promise," Kiyohime elaborated. "Oh, well." Naruto realized what she meant, and he looped his finger with her own. "Okay, Kiyohime, I'll make you my bride," he promised. Not knowing the full ramifications of his actions, Kiyohime held her head low, making Naruto think that he did something wrong, but she quickly lifted her head back up. "We have an accord," Kiyohime said darkly as her eyes lighted like a flame. "Break this promise and face the bell," she threatened. Naruto got visions of horrific death, one that involved him being burned alive within a metal prison of his own making. Quickly, the hallucination stopped, as Kiyohime's expression changed to one of pure delight. The smile she gave in return was bright enough to make his heart soar. It wasn't long after that the girl left to go back to her father, practically skipping on her feet. He never ended up seeing her at that park again. "It seemed you made a friend," her father said fondly, as his daughter approached him with the brightest smile he had ever seen on her. He quickly matched it, seeing his daughter happy was. "I didn't make a friend," Kiyohime said. "I'm going to get married, Daddy," she said, nearly stopping her father's heart in the process. "So, you're the girl the brat told me about," Tsunade remarked. Kiyohime smiled at her statement. She was just happy that her love had talked about her. She looked towards the blonde Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi's replacement, the fifth Hokage. I believe I am, he is my betrothed after all, she said, happy with that fact. Yeah, I heard about the agreement the old man made with the fire temple. Naruto should be here soon enough, Tsunade remarked, having full confidence that the blonde would return. She couldn't wait to see Naruto. They hadn't seen each other ever since he had left to go with that perverted man to go retrieve the woman in front of her. If she were honest with herself, she enjoyed Konoha much more than the fire temple. But the fact that Naruto was away made her angry. She couldn't wait for him to return. And as if by some tragic fate, she got her wish, as a dark-haired female, Shizune, Tsunade's apprentice and assistant, rushed inside. Uncaring of any others that were in the room, she shouted, "Lady Tsunade, the group we sent to retrieve Sasuke Uchiha has returned," she informed. But Tsunade saw the state her apprentice was in, her appearance looking exhausted as she was left panting for breath. "Shizune, report," Tsunade ordered, all mirth in her voice having been lost. "The Akimichi heir is left on the very death, taking his clan's red forbidden pill. Niji Hyuga has a hole in his shoulder. Shikamaru Nara only has a broken finger," but Shirun told them the bitter news, before she was interrupted. "Naruto? What about Naruto?" Kiyohime asked, a pit in her stomach forming as it grew with each name and every name. She just wanted to know what happened to the object of her affection. Shizune's breath hitched. "Naruto, he's left in a critical state." Shatter. Kiyohime burst through the nearby window, intent on finding the nearest hospital, hoping to find Naruto there. Did she just? Shizune trailed off in disbelief. Tsunade was much the same, but she knew time was of the essence. She climbed out the nearby window, similarly to a certain large-muscled raikage in Lightning Country. "We need to move, fast. This failure of a mission left many of my shinobi in need of help," Tsunade stated, but as she was about to climb out of the window, Shizune spoke up. "That's the thing, Lady Tsunade, the mission was a success," she told her. Later. Bleary blue eyes opened, for what seemed like the first time. Ironically, with how much he'd been unconscious, he didn't feel well rested at all. Far from it, in fact, his whole body felt sore, his muscles ached, as a large weight could be felt across his chest. Honestly, he kind of felt like he was dying, or he had died already. And that wasn't far from the truth. He couldn't quite remember what had happened exactly. He remembered that he had been sent on a mission, one to retrieve Sasuke Uchiha from the clutches of Orochimaru's subordinates, from the same man that killed Hiruzen, his grandfather. Their squad had been led by Shikamaru Nara, with Choji Akimichi, Kiba Inuzuka, Niji Hyuga, and himself. But they had been met with heavy opposition, so they had been forced to leave one of their members behind to deal with one of Orochimaru's own subordinates. This continued until he was the only one left. And Sasuke had been found, but he had opposed going back to Konoha. Apparently, the Snake Sannin had given the Uchiha a cursed seal, something that would significantly increase his teammates' power. A battle ensued, and Naruto had nearly died, he would have, but in the end, Naruto tried to remember what happened next, and like a dam being broken, the rush of memories came flooding in. A small smile graced his lip. He had won. He won in their clash, dragged him back kicking and screamed, just as he had said. Okay, that wasn't exactly true, but he had dragged the unconscious Sasuke back to Konoha, or he would have, had Kakashi not found him, as he collapsed on his back. He had to get home after all. He needed to come back to Konoha, back too. He finally noticed something. The plain white ceilings he had expected to see weren't there. No, as he opened his eyes, he saw that the only thing he could see was the bright color of teal. He didn't quite understand it, and he could smell the familiar scent of disinfectant that was clear within the air. He realized something, his heart slipping a beat as he did so. "Kiyohime?" he asked, as he rose from his laying position, and true enough, he realized just what the weight upon his chest was. As the hair that had been covering his eyes moved from his face, the body that had been airing upon his figure stirred, as he watched her slowly awaking form move from her position. Cute was his only thought, as he watched her awaken. She rubbed her large golden eyes, as a faint blush dusted his cheeks. It only took her 5 seconds for her to comprehend the situation. "Naruto-kun. You're awake," she shouted in delight, a large smile adorning her face as she rushed towards him, hugging his neck as she did so. Naruto soon gained a smile of his own, seeing his friend. "Kiyohime-chan," he sighed, as he began hesitantly hugging her back. But it was then he realized something, squeezed his body, hard. "Kiyohime-chan, what are you?" he tried to question, as his still aching body cried out. The girl pulled back, as she looked at his face. As Naruto saw those blazing golden eyes he was very familiar with. "Naruto? You weren't planning on leaving me, weren't you?" She questioned darkly, squeezing him even tighter, as Naruto realized just what would happen if he lied. "And no. Kiyohime-chan. I wasn't, I made a promise, after all," he told her, stuttering in fear a little at her tone. Kiyohime's face lit up as bright as the sun, as she smiled just as bright. "Oh really, I knew you would," she shouted, once again, in delight. Jumping towards his neck and hugging him once more. It was as if she were bipolar or something. Honestly, the situation was so absurd that Naruto couldn't help but laugh. Nearly losing balance as he almost fell off of his hospital bed. "I love you, I love you, I love you," she cheered, nearly so fast for her mind to process. As Naruto's face was lit ablaze. What?" he questioned, yelling as he did so, his mind working in overdrive to process this new information. Kiyohime pulled back, realizing what she said, being slightly nervous, which was something surprising given her usual attitude. "Well, I'm your betrothed, so." She trailed off, a small amount of pink on her cheeks. "So you love me?" he questioned, to which she hesitantly nodded. Kiyohime was his friend, he knew that. She was his first friend, and she had been there for him when he needed him most. And she loved him. She was probably the first person who had ever said that to him. But didn't he love Sakura? He always thought so, but every time he had looked at the pink-haired girl now, his heart didn't skip a beat like it once had. What did he think of Kiyohime? She was pretty, scary, dependable, beautiful, scary and scary, but that's how she was, and it was the reason he loved her after all. Loved? He questioned, why had his mind thought of that? Naruto didn't know how to feel about that. Staring into space for what seemed like hours. Kiyohime was growing increasingly more worried with each passing second. What if he left her? What if he broke off their marriage? No, he wouldn't do that. She knew that, he had promised after all, and she had the utmost faith in her. But she couldn't help but think those thoughts. "Kiyohime?" Naruto questioned in a monotone voice. "Naruto-kun?" Kiyohime asked with bated breath. Naruto smiled. "Do you want to get married?" he asked, and Kiyohime blinked. "Of course." She cheered, jumping across his neck once again, uncaring of his recovering injuries. Naruto would have laughed, but his ribs were hurting at the moment. He didn't care. Kiyohime was the reason he fought after all, the reason he returned to the Leaf. She was his precious person, after all. Kiyohime was ecstatic, they were going to get married. She chanted with her mind, completely forgetting they were already betrothed. They would always be together. After all, he did have a promise to keep, and she hated liars. The end. Omake, Sasuke's payback. Konoha's interrogation ward was as expected. Dark stone and concrete rooms, dripping pipes that led onto the floor. As he sat tied up within a straitjacket on top of his metal chair that lay within the center of the room. A single light shining upon him in the otherwise dimly lit room. That scarred man tried to use his mind games, but he had managed to keep his mouth shut throughout it all. It would only be a matter of time before Orochimaru would find him. The man had offered him power, the power to defeat his enemies, and the power to achieve his goals. Life within Konoha was stagnating his abilities, he could feel himself growing weaker and weaker with each passing day. Even the dobe was getting stronger than him. He watched the blonde defeat Gaara, Tsunagekyu's Jinchuriki, someone even he couldn't defeat. He needed power. That kind of power. He would avenge his clan, bring his brother Itachi to justice the only way he knew how. All he had to do was get out of this dumpan. A stray sound knocked him out of his thoughts, a loud creak of the large metal door as it opened. He expected to see Moroni Ibiki, the proctor he had met during the first round of the Chunin exams. But he didn't see a trace of the scarred man at all. As glowing yellow eyes pierced through the darkness. Who are you? He demanded, and although he wouldn't admit it, he had accidentally stuttered asking his question. A faint giggle emanated from the shadows, one filled with delight and anticipation. He felt that something was behind him. As he turned his head to look behind him, the hair on the back of his neck standing on end. Sasuke. The shadows whispered, as the dark-haired youth turned his head once again, being drawn towards the voice. Sasuke, 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 it whispered once again. Show yourself. He shouted once again, and surprisingly, the owner of the voice did so. The person that stepped into the light, as her entire figure could be seen. Long teal hair, golden slitted eyes, and a set of white horns rested upon her head. Wait, he recognized this girl, as his eyes widened slightly, not expecting to see her in such a place. He started, but was interrupted. I'm Naruto's fiancée. The girl finished with a bright smile, as she clutched onto something with both of her hands, a small paper fan. Before her eyes narrowed, the fiancé of the person you hurt, she told him, her eyes glowing once more. The dobe, Naruto, the person who had started all this and stopped him from reaching Orochimaru. Rage overtook his emotions. If it hadn't been for him, he would already. Pain seeped into his cheek. No, you were thinking poorly of him, weren't you? Kiyohime admonished, her paper fan being lit with small flames as she pressed it harshly against his skin. How? He questioned within his mind, but it seemed that thought was so loud within his mind that it emanated from his lips. Did she somehow have an ability to read his mind? She didn't answer his question, she only continued her tirade. You hurt him, you know, Kiyohime told him with a frown. Pressing her singeing fan against his neck. Ah! He cried out in pain, feeling the flames burn his skin. And not just his body, she continued, pushing the fire against his back to emphasize her point, and Sasuke. But his heart too. Kiyohime burned his chest, right over his heart. Ack! He couldn't help himself. She clutched onto his chin, forcing his head to meet his own, as he saw those raging golden orbs glare into his very soul. He thought of you as a brother, his own blood, as well, she told him, her fingertips catching fire as well. And that's when he saw it. A dragon so large and great it sent shivers down his spine. You hurt him, and now you're going to pay. Kiyohime set her burning fingertips against his cheek. Sasuke's screams would sound through the room for hours. Kiyohime was glad she had managed to convince Lady Tsunade to allow her to handle Sasuke's interrogation. So glad in fact that she forgot to ask him a single question.